Welcome to The Cynical Developer, the podcast that helps you to improve your development knowledge and career through explaining the latest and greatest in development technology and providing you with what you need to succeed as a developer. We've recently launched our Patreon page, which can be found at cynicaldeveloper.com/Patreon. If you aren't familiar with Patreon, it's an easy way for those who are interested in this show to help out by simply pledging a small amount each month in sponsorship. Now that could be as little as $5 a month, which is about £3.80, or as much as you like. You will enable us to dedicate more time creating more content to help you, including videos, more blog posts, and even more shows. So if you can, head over to cynicaldeveloper.com/Patreon and get involved. In this episode, we speak to Stuart Mitchell about security in IoT. Stuart Mitchell is the CEO of the IoT startup mokanix, which is a Tata Communications business incubated in the company's Shape the Future program. The inspiration in mokanix came from wondering why mobile operators didn't allow access to some of their core control functionality via easy-to-use APIs. The venture is being established to see what us software developers could make, given greater control and security of our mobile data connections. Stuart is an industry veteran and innovator. His career in wireless telecommunications spans over 20 years, during which time he's worked in a variety of cutting-edge vendors, both large corporates and startups. His experience is as diverse as programming pages, as radio paging and internet security solutions, and Stuart worked at the forefront of both VoIP and photo messaging, both of which we take for granted today. Stuart started his career as a broadcast engineer and still has a passion for playing and listening to music and podcasts. He's usually found in airport lounges or speaking to customers while walking his over-enthusiastic dog in the fields near where he lives. And welcome to The Cynical Developer, Stuart.
Thank you, James. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you on to talk about this. What is, I guess, a hot topic at the moment. Everything is IoT. I was looking for a new kettle not that long ago, and there was an IoT kettle, which sounded really cool, apart from the fact that if it was empty and you needed to put water in, you had to go to the kitchen and fill it up anyway. So it was completely pointless.
Yeah, there's always a catch somewhere, isn't there?
Yeah. So we're here to talk about the security in IoT, which I guess is quite a scary thing at the moment, because having all these devices in the house connected, are they listening? What are they doing? What are they recording? What are they sending out? Who knows? But I guess for some people out there, they might not even know what IoT or Internet of Things is. So what is IoT?
Well, if you go out on the internet and you look up and say, what is the Internet of Things, you'll read statements like, well, it's the networking of physical objects so they can communicate with each other. I mean, that's great, but I think what really brings the Internet of Things to life is when you can connect devices to the internet or a network of some description such that they can communicate, share information, and actually take decisions based on that information. So if I was to give you an example of that, I wake up in the morning by my alarm clock going off by the side of my bed. Wouldn't it be great if I just set my alarm clock for 6:30 and my alarm clock talked to my central heating system and told my central heating system that it needed to warm up the house, ready to be at 20 degrees by the time I actually got out of bed? The central heating could then use sensors dotted around the house to decide for itself what time it needs to turn on in the morning. And then when I actually do rise and get out of bed, it could then connect to my Internet of Things kettle that you talked about earlier, and also to the home lighting, so that the house is ready for me without me fumbling around in the dark trying to find a light switch and trying to get the kettle on. That's great within a sort of a home environment, but if you think about that on a massive scale, if the electricity grid actually knows how many people are getting up at 6:30, how many people are getting up at 7, how many people are getting up at 7:30 and are about to turn their kettle on, they can actually plan for those peaks and troughs of demand, because they'll know exactly what's going on in both domestic and in business premises, and they can plan their delivery of electricity to the grid accordingly. And similarly, things like transport management systems. So if the Internet of Things knows that I'm going to be leaving my house at 7 a.m, then maybe the performance and the behaviour of the traffic lights is going to change in order to give good traffic flow for all the people coming in from out of town into the city. It sounds very futuristic, I know, but all this technology exists today. And what's going on right now is planning for the future. What we're seeing in our homes is the very start of this around, Internet of Things, kettles, other bits and pieces we'll talk about, thermostats, lighting, etc. But, we can see there's a very clear vision of where all this stuff is going. And I think that the future is very exciting.
Yeah, it's a good description because, as you said, if you go and look at it online, it basically just describes what the internet is. It's devices connected together that can talk to each other. And I think even non-technical people understand that that's how the internet works to a degree. So actually understanding how those devices could talk to each other is sort of opening that up and giving a better understanding to what IoT actually is. But,
absolutely. Sorry. The key around the Internet of Things is not just the capturing of information; it's the capturing, the transportation, the storage, the analysis of information, and then using all of that information in an intelligent way to inform behaviour.
Yeah. So the fact that it's collecting all this information, I guess it can be a concern to people. Should it be a concern?
Oh, absolutely. The example I talked about with the alarm clock, there's a device sitting right by the side of your bed. To some people, that's a very private area of the house. I would always urge everyone to be very concerned about security issues around the Internet of Things. The more things that are connected to the Internet, the more information that's being gathered, the more information that's being stored. And obviously, when information is stored, it can be accessed in one form or another. We've seen some very large-scale Internet of Things-based attacks, like the Mirai botnet attack in October 2016, and that's really showed what happens when insecure devices are connected to a network.
Right, and could you talk a little bit more about that? What was the actual problem? What happened?
On Mirai botnet was caused by a number of sort of cheaper type of devices, I guess. Things like webcams, video recorders, DVRs, things of that nature. They believe that around 100,000 devices were actually compromised. So a botnet was used to download some malware onto all these open devices that were sitting in people's homes, in office premises, all over the world. And the power of all those devices were harnessed to launch a denial of service attack. The owners of the devices weren't aware that their devices had been compromised. They certainly didn't give permission for it, and they wouldn't even know if they were used as part of the entire botnet attack. The key thing around that is that all those devices were actually using all their default passwords, so they were all open, fully open for anyone on the internet to go out, find, install the malware, and use for their own purposes.
Right. So apart from them being open, being able to put software on that, I guess it's a little bit like the phone hacking scandal that happened not too long ago. People didn't change the default passwords on it, and basically opened themselves up to being compromised because of it.
That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. And that's a key piece of advice that I'm sure I'm going to be coming back to while we talk today is around ensuring that your devices are kept secure and private.
Yeah. So what sort of data are these devices acquiring?
So the type of data that these devices could be acquiring is as wide as the number of devices that could be connected to the Internet of Things. So there's lots of talk about things like streetlights. There's talk of things like putting sensors into your rubbish bin so that the council knows when your bin needs collecting and or can measure how much waste you're sending to landfill. The possibilities of connecting devices to the Internet of Things is almost limitless. So the amount of information that they could be gathering about you as an individual or us as a society is equally limitless.
Yeah, I think some of these devices, I could see from a business point of view how collecting this data is invaluable, really. How useful it could be for targeting what products get developed next. But the likes, we talked about the kettles, I've seen IoT toasters, IoT doorbells. A lot of those for a consumer seem really pointless to me. Like the I guess the Amazon, I don't know what they call them. They're like little buttons that you press to reorder something. There's nothing that I need so urgently that I need a button in my kitchen that's connected to my Wi-Fi to order more coffee. It's not that much of an emergency. I could see in a corporate setting, in a hotel, maybe some sort of accommodation that maybe we need new washing powder or dishwasher salt or something like that, and you could press it and it orders it. That'd be great. But in a domestic setting, a lot of these seem pretty pointless to me. Do we really need all of these devices?
Well, I think what we've talked about is, the true power of IoT comes from deep integration. And until all the devices can really communicate with each other, I tend to agree with you. They are something of a gimmick. I mean, you talk about, I think, the Amazon Dot buttons, they call them, don't they?
Yeah.
You certainly don't want to have one of those in your house when all your friends come round for a few beers, because you can get a nasty surprise the next morning. I mean, speaking personally, I don't have a smart home myself. I'm still quite happy to get up and use the light switch on the wall because it works perfectly for me. I've seen those ads on the TV for things like doorbells and the like, and I definitely don't believe they could. They operate as smoothly as we see on TV, particularly with mobile coverage like it is in the UK.
Sure.
So I think those sort of devices, it's the start, right? This is where we start. This is where people get these devices and start to play with them. The thermostats. It's I guess the big leap comes from the devices talking to each other and controlling each other. So, think about a smart thermostat. I talked earlier in my example with my alarm clock should be able to talk to my central heating system in order to heat up my house when I need it to. Right now, that's manual, right? So I have to open up an app on my smartphone, connect to my Nest, and then tell it when to turn on the heating. We can see that the future is these devices will start to talk to each other, and then it becomes a seamless exercise. And at that point, we move out of the realms of the gimmicks that we have today into something that's much more powerful.
Yeah. My parents own a couple of holiday homes, and they've got it's either Hive or Nest. It's one of the two in their holiday homes, and they use their mobile apps to put the heating on and things for when guests are coming in. Now, if we could hook that into a booking system, which automatically knew that a customer was going to turn up at 2:00 in the afternoon, the day was going to be a particularly cold day, we could put the IoT sort of device there, could put the heating on for us and put it to a reasonable temperature for when that client got there. Again, corporate sort of setting that I think would definitely benefit from. I know I looked at getting some light fittings and things, and the cost of it, I know how much an hourly my hours cost.
Yep.
And the £40 or so for a light doesn't really equate to me walking across the room to turn a light on or off, once or twice a day. So
and how often do you want your room bathed in green light as well, right?
Yeah, that's something I wasn't too sure about. A lovely pink hue, you might get some unwanted clientele knocking the door.
Did you see that tweet that was getting a lot of attention earlier on? I think it was over the weekend, maybe, or late last week. As a young developer who actually, I don't know if you've seen those little desk tidies you can get in the shape of a wheelie bin.
Right. Okay.
But he'd taken one of those, put a microcontroller inside, and put a set of colour-changing LEDs, and actually hooked it into his local council refuse collection internet page, so that it could actually tell you the bin itself lit up the colour of the bin that you had to put out for that week.
Oh, right. Okay.
Really, really nice example. I will dig out a link to that tweet so you can share that with the listeners if you like. But a really nice example of just someone goofing around, having a bit of fun, but actually a real life example, because everyone hates having to remember which coloured top bin to put out. Is it recycling day? Is it waste day? When does the garden bin go out? It drives people crazy. So a nice little example like that. It's been built specifically for one particular council, but wouldn't it be great if every single bin was able to let you know exactly when it was due to go out around bank holidays and waste collections, etc. So.
Yeah, it does that. That's quite a nice idea. And for those listeners that aren't in the UK, our trash collection is pretty appalling at times. I know for me, in my local area, they will pick up the black bin, which is normal domestic waste, on one week. The following week will be like garden waste, and it's trying to remember that cycle. and
Yep.
which one goes on. Now we have schedules put through the door as a piece of paper now and again, and that inadvertently disappears halfway through the year, and we never know. And if you're away on holiday, then that can make it even harder to remember. So having something like that on the bin that told you what bin was to be put out, that'd be great. But even better if you could put it out itself, especially because when they come around to collect it, I know here they can collect it anything from about 6:30 in the morning to about 4:00 in the afternoon. So it's hit and miss whether we get it sometimes. It's for a lot of IoT development, I've not really done a lot. I've done some stuff with the Amazon device, and I won't say a name, which I guess that falls into the world of IoT. And I've had questions about security issues with these devices listening all the time. Now, I've said to people, and from what I've read, they're not actually listening all the time. I think there was a big case in America that I think the FBI asked Amazon for the data. I think it might have been Google, but I think it was Amazon in a domestic violence case, and they couldn't provide that data. But is that a real concern? Could some of these devices, especially as you mentioned earlier, some of the cheaper devices, be listening all the time and scraping away your information?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually going to draw a distinction between hearing and listening, right? Which kind of takes us back to our school days, I guess. But they've got to be hearing all the time, right?
Yep.
Because otherwise they can't be woken up by voice recognition, and that not goes. I can speak freely because I don't have one of these devices in the room with me. But that goes for Alexa, that goes for Siri, that goes for all the equivalent devices out there. So. Sure, they're hearing all the time. Are they actually listening? Are they taking the data of? Are they capturing all of the surrounding audio, converting it into digital bits and storing it in the cloud? Really only the manufacturers can tell you that. My advice to anybody who wanted to hear from me would be, if you don't trust Apple, Amazon, Google, you might want to think about, whether you're prepared to put one of these devices into your home. I think I would say, I can't categorically say if they're listening or not, but if you're going to let them into your home, be prepared for them to do that.
Yeah, I can totally get behind that sentiment as well, because I have a friend who didn't like the idea of Facebook and any social network knowing anything about him, so he removed himself from all those sort of networks. But I actually went in the complete other direction. I got rid of all my screen names online, and if you search for James Studdart, you will find me. You will find me in hobbies such as tropical fish keeping. You'll find online games I used to play. I've got nothing to hide because I'm not doing anything illegal or anything like that. I'm not that concerned about that sort of data being out there. Yes, people could be selling it for one reason or another, but as long as they're not cloning my identity, I'm not all too concerned about it. And I've got two of the Amazon devices. I've got one in the office here that I use mainly for listening to music. I don't use it for making calls. I don't need anything that urgent that I need to order anything via it. And very similar to the one downstairs in the living room as well. The kids use that to listen to music, and that they are only 3, so they're not listening to a lot of stuff with it unless we ask for it. They're not that advanced. But some of the scary things that I have come across with these devices is that I know of somebody who had a security system, an alarm system on their home, and they were able to sniff the packets on their local network and actually build themselves a mobile app for turning their alarm system on and off.
Yeah.
And that is very, very scary because it doesn't take a lot of work to get into somebody's home Wi-Fi network. And if you can get onto their network and then sniff that data and even connect securely to these alarm systems, then organised criminals are going to be lapping that up.
Absolutely. I mean, you need to be really careful to think about what you decide to connect to your home network. Wi-Fi by its very nature is very easy to connect to. Often, I don't know about where you live, but even in the small village that I live, I can see 7 or 8 SSIDs from where I am, including the local guy who's decided to call his MI5 secure surveillance van. Yeah, I know. It doesn't make me laugh anymore. Anyway, but I mean, I at least go to the care of hiding all my SSIDs so that my neighbours can't even see my Wi-Fi hotspots at a starting point. But like you say, Wi-Fi is inherently insecure. It is relatively easy to get into, and anything connected to that device can typically be accessed. So, it's a little bit... there are a lot of analogies. Actually, you talked about home alarm. There's a lot of analogies about securing your network is like securing your home, right? Ultimately, you cannot stop people getting into your house if they want to get into your house. They'll smash your windows, they'll kick your doors in, they'll drive a truck into the front of your house and smash the front wall out, right?
Yeah.
What you need to do is make it more and more difficult so that basically they go elsewhere. And that's, our approach that I've always thought about when it comes to things like home networking. So, use of passwords, hiding SSIDs, using firewalling on your router whenever you can. All of these typical common techniques, very much for the home Wi-Fi. For things like IoT, perhaps it's appropriate to look at other methods of connectivity outside of Wi-Fi. Some of the low-powered networks that are coming along, or even cellular data.
Yeah, and I think it is that deterrent as well. I think to take it down to an even simpler level is that your push bikes, your mountain bikes and things that you have, you put a padlock and chain on it. Now, it doesn't take a great deal to actually get one of those off of a bike, but it's just enough of a deterrent to stop people and think, no, I can't be bothered, so they don't do it.
Yep, we actually ran a recent hackathon at University of Edinburgh. They kindly invited us up to with some of our mokanix SIM cards, which hopefully we'll talk about in a bit. And one of them built a bike alarm using some of the capability to attach underneath the saddle, so that if the bike was stolen, it would not only get an alarm from it, but also be able to track it in real time and find out where it was. Now, that's all great. I think that does kind of beg the question: what happens when you come face to face with the guy who's just stolen your bike? But it's not sure I'd want to be there. But nevertheless, no, it just shows how Internet of Things can apply to something as simple as a regular push bike as well, right?
Yeah. And maybe they could hook that up with the social engineering videos that are online with the push bikes that get stolen, and they've actually electrified the bike. So when it sees that it's being stolen, it puts a charge into the bike and electrocutes the guy that's taking it. But you probably get prosecuted for electrocuting them. But I think it might be worth it.
That sounds like you've got some nice friends, James.
Yeah. I live in a lovely area, though. So with all these security concerns around the information, is there any regulation bodies or governing bodies, anything like that are looking at these devices to come up with some rules and legislation?
Regulation is really hard. As I mentioned, Wi-Fi has been designed to be easy to connect to, and it's very common. So I have not come across any particular sort of rules and regulation around these devices. I think, moreover, people have got very used to buying cheap devices, right? If I can go to Amazon and I can see a webcam that's going to shoot out of my front door and give me an idea of who's knocking on my front door, so I don't have to go downstairs from my home office, it's going to cost me £20. I'm probably going to pick it up and install it, right? So, it is a nightmare for home use, but it's also a nightmare for the corporates, because people are taking these devices with them into the work environment as well, because we have moves going on like bring your own device. All of the corporate lands tend to be open as well, and the ability for compromise is really quite horrifying.
Yeah, and you mentioned they're taking these IoT devices into the workplace. Now, anywhere that's taking payments or working with credit cards or anything, you've got PCI DSS compliancy, which I guess they're going to be in breach of in some way, shape or form, depending on what level they're at. But surely the information should be covered by, at least in Europe, by the new GDPR legislation that's come out, because you can take my IP address, you could take information about me from the device, and it's PII, it's personal identifiable information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, GDPR, that's everyone's favourite subject right now, isn't it? I mean, I think we've all seen enough of those GDPR compliance emails to know that really, well, I mean, how different are they? Some people say if you don't tell us you're going to stay, we're going to opt you out. Some people just say we've changed our privacy policy. I think it's fair to say GDPR is pretty poorly drafted legislation that, of all the experts out there talking about it, providing seminars and tutorials about it, don't even seem to agree between themselves what the best practice is. So, GDPR is great for the use of personal information, but, that's okay for the storing of your individual information in the cloud or something of that nature. You have the ability to get it wiped or erased or whatever. But, what about those malicious attacks? What about those people sniffing packets like you talked about earlier? They don't care about GDPR.
No. I guess it falls into the realm of making handguns illegal in the United States, because making handguns illegal is going to make the bad guys that do the naughty things hand their guns over, isn't it? So I guess it's all in the same vein, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
But okay, so we talked a little bit about securing ourselves. Is there anything that you could say to the listeners? You should be looking at doing this, that, or the other to secure yourself if you are using these IoT devices?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really important to choose a device you can password protect, right? That's the first step of putting that bike lock around your bike to stop someone picking it up and walking away with it. Passwords are not uncrackable, but it will prevent, easy compromise by someone who's looking to get in. Similarly, when you talk about the home, we talk about Wi-Fi, look at your home router. It's worth spending a little bit more to make sure you can get a more sophisticated model that's got, full firewalling capability on it, just to make sure that, again, you've got that kind of protection from all the nasties that are out there on the public internet. What we're doing at mokanix, we're looking at trying to give people security on the public internet. With our SIM cards, today, if you go to a mobile operator and want to get a secure private connection, it's very costly, difficult to get hold of, and it takes a long time, 2-year contracts and all the rest of it. We're looking to try and democratize that and offer very easy, quick to spin up VPN connections so that people can get tunnel connections straight through the public internet very easily. But I think finally and crucially, and it's something that I'd love that you talked about, that you're doing, James. Think about what data you're putting out there, and think about what you're happy to share. You might not care that anyone in the world knows how much rubbish you're putting into your trash can every week, but if someone launches a ransomware attack on your home and locks down all of your years of holiday photos, and is demanding money in order to give them back, that's a different story. So think about where you put your data, think about how you store it, and think about the devices that you connect to your network.
Yeah, definitely. And thinking about the Wi-Fi, I've got what I thought was a reasonably good router and Wi-Fi network at home, but somebody in the local area either has another 2.5 gigahertz network that's on the same channel, or
Right.
they're doing something that keeps knocking out that network. My device also does 5 gigahertz, so I turned off the 2.5 gigahertz network and just used the 5. I thought, right, that's great, everything's working, until I turned on some devices that used to be connected to the 2.5 gigahertz network, and surprisingly, they can still connect to the network and use it. And I've turned this off in the settings in the router. I haven't hidden it. It actually says disable, and I can still connect to it.
So is that got the same functionality as the anti-skid protection you get on cars? What's it called? Traction control. Traction control that there's a button in the car that says turn off traction control, but actually the engine management is still sitting there in the background going, you know what, I'm actually going to keep you alive.
Yeah. So I've been debating about going out and buying something else, buying a different device because of that. I haven't got anybody that's malicious that's been on my network and wants to come in and connect to me and go from there. But it did make me sort of sit up and take note of it and think maybe this isn't the good device that I thought it was. It's not doing what it says on the tin.
No, sure, absolutely.
But you touched on there that your company deals with SIM cards, and as I mentioned in the intro, it's in telecoms. So
yep.
how do these SIM cards fit in with IoT?
Well, so I mean, a very common use case for an IoT device is not necessarily a device in the home. It could be anywhere in the field, so to speak. So last week we were engaging with the National Park in Northumbria, in the north of England. And they were looking at a wide-ranging IoT type project to see if they could, monitor footfall, find out how much the peat bogs are storing water. They want to look at, early wildfire detection. They're looking at whether they can use drones and IoT for search and rescue. 10 or so fascinating use cases, but not in an area, not an environment that has fixed infrastructure. So when you get out into the field, you need to start using wireless technologies to be able to get the coverage and get the reach that you need. Now, there are lots of different sorts of technologies. I don't know if you're aware of things like LoRaWAN and Sigfox, these kind of unlicensed, low power, low bandwidth applications. They're becoming more and more pervasive and more interesting around the country. They have their limitations around bandwidth in particular. And I'm always a little bit nervous about the use of unlicensed spectrum. So what we're doing at mokanix is, we're offering SIM cards that roam onto the traditional mobile telephone networks. Today, using 3G, 4G, sometimes 2G, and obviously, I've got a future into 5G and beyond. But also, fairly soon in the mobile networks, we'll be seeing some lower bandwidth applications come along that allow these devices to have a much longer battery life. So mokanix is looking at what can we do for IoT connectivity with SIM cards on the mobile networks, which many other people are doing today. What's different about mokanix is we're trying to build a proposition purely around the software development community.
Right, yeah, because in the introduction we said that you're opening up APIs into the core functionality of the mobile network. So what does that actually mean? What am I getting access to via APIs apart from the likes of what we would expect as current bandwidth, maybe credit on the card, that sort of thing?
Sure. So when you think about your mobile phone today, there's a bunch of stuff that the mobile operator does all the time without you necessarily thinking about it. Your mobile operator always knows where you are because they need to know which mast you're connected to so they can direct a call to you. Obviously, your smartphone probably has a GPS chip in it as well, and it can detect satellites. But the mobile operator always knows where you are. So what if we took that information and made it available so that even in a very small, cheap device that doesn't have a GPS capability, a developer can send a command, find out where their SIM card is now. What are they going to do with that? I don't know. They could decide to do something like a two-factor authentication play, right? James has just tapped his entry badge on his office at Manchester. Where's his SIM card?
Yep.
If his SIM card's in France right now, might not be James. Maybe we're going to want to think about whether to let him into the office immediately. So that's something around location. Also, if you think about, when you reach the end of your credit for your mobile data on your device, often the mobile operator actually throttle your data back. Mobile operators can actually set data rate throughput on the SIM card to be anything they like. So again, why don't we've built an API around that, and we're offering that to developers to say, use external triggers to change the amount of bandwidth available to a device. Maybe you would want James's SIM card to be able to not be able to stream video on his long train journey home because that's going to cost you as a corporate a lot of money, but you still want him to receive his emails. So you don't want to cut him off, but you want him to just ramp right down the throughput allowed to the SIM card so that it works for emails but does not work for video. Something of that nature, maybe. That's the other thing. And the only other thing that we've done is we've built some APIs around URLs and IP address whitelists and blacklists. So again, we see this in the mobile operators. Sometimes you can buy a plan that doesn't let you access adult content. How do they do that? They look at the IP addresses, the URLs you're seeking to look up, and they either block them or allow them. So again, we could say to James, when James is in the office environment, we're going to give him access to the Office 365 suite, but we're going to block him from using Facebook because we don't want him wasting his time on Facebook. But when he taps his entry badge to go out, let's give him Facebook. At least he can catch up on the day's social activity on the train ride home.
Sure. Yeah, that's really good. I've worked in telecoms for a time, and we had a mobile device management system called SOTI, which gave us some of those capabilities, but I don't think it gave you everything that you listed there. So I think definitely from a corporate point of view, that gives the business so much more control over what their staff members are using their phones for and what they're not using them for.
Absolutely. It's not just for people, it's also for devices. We speak to a lot of people who, perhaps more in the emerging markets, who are very keen to be able to get remote access to devices, but don't want those, people taking the SIM cards, putting them into a handset and using up all the data. Yeah. So, combining things like location with URL filtering, single-use SIM cards, right? We had a conversation with a company that was looking to provide a, cryptocurrency type application. And they came to us and said, so we can get SIM cards that can only connect to our cryptocurrency app because we can lock it down to a single URL or IP address range. And also on the flip side, we can only allow devices, that are coming in through that route to access us. We've got fantastic end-to-end security because we've actually secured it from both sides. So some very interesting things that are going on.
Yeah, and I could see how something like Pokemon Go or Ingress could use that sort of technology because they could. I don't know whether they've done this, whether I'm giving them yet another multi-million-pound idea, but they could have devices that you buy, an Ingress device or a Pokemon Go Pokeball that has one of these in that will only connect to their servers, and you can play their game for a subscription fee, I guess. Yep. And I guess it's along the same lines as the WhisperNet for the Kindle devices, or what used to be the WhisperNet. Whether it still uses that, I don't know. It's been a long time since I had an actual Kindle device, to be fair.
Okay, yeah, I mean, similar sort of idea, right? What made Kindle and the WhisperNet viable is the low bandwidth. Well, a Kindle really doesn't need to download very much information, so why not restrict it down to 56K?
Yeah.
However, you might want to, in today's, Kindle Fire, it's colour screen, you might want to be able to stream a movie. Well, if you could buy the movie from Amazon could, ramp up your bandwidth to allow you to watch that movie and then strip it right back down again when you're finished. Yeah, that's the kind of use case that we're looking at for our SIM cards.
Yeah, because before mobile phone roaming was included in the package in certain areas, and it was cheaper outside of those zones. I used to take my Kindle abroad with me because through a certain key combination, it opened up other functionality within the Kindle, and it gave you a browser, and I could go on. And when I was abroad, I think I had it in Mexico, and I could check all my email. It didn't work very well, but it worked just enough that I could check my emails and read them. So that was a nice little device.
We finally got to the reason why you've got cynical developer in your title.
Yeah, definitely is. And these sort of SIM cards they're the answer to a product that I'd been thinking about for bus networks, and having them on buses, and the bus stops being able to know where the next number 10 is coming. They could show you on a map at the bus stop where it was, that it was going to be so far away. That'd be great. But unless it had GPS, it's going to be using cellular triangulation, isn't it, between the masts? Yes. I don't know how accurate that actually is, though.
Yeah, it's not fantastically accurate. we're not selling it in competition with GPS. GPS still has far greater resolution. The reason we offer location API is because the mobile networks know it anyway. It's available. We don't charge for the use of our APIs. They're an enabler for people to build solutions. So, it's a piece of information we offer. It enables SIM cards to go into cheaper devices and still have some idea of location. So.
Yeah. Well, if the listeners wanted to get their hands on one of these SIM cards, can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. At the website, we're currently open for business, and we'll take orders from anybody. We've tried to make it accessible to everybody. So the starting point is what we call a SIM starter pack, where you get 3 SIM cards, you get an amount of credit put onto your bill. We'll ship them to you directly, multi-form factor SIM, so they'll go into any device. And you've got enough there to have a play with it and figure out what you can do. Register an account on the website, mokanix.io, and you're good to go.
Yeah, it sounds really cool, and it's another one of those ones. Oh, I want to have a go with that, but I would imagine that I would order it. They would be sat on my desk next to the 3 Raspberry Pis that I've got, all the other little toys that I've bought to play with and never get round to doing anything with. So it probably isn't for me just now, but I'm sure there'll be some listeners out there that are probably quite excited about this technology and the fact that they can get their hands on it. They don't have to be some big corporate to get this technology.
No, it's an important part of what we wanted to do. I mean, I talked earlier about democratizing VPN. I want to make it easy for anybody to come and get a hold of these SIM cards and play, because we really don't know where the next unicorn is going to come from. Who is going to be the next Uber? Who is going to be the next Stripe? Who is going to come up with the best possible solution for our SIM cards and build them into a world-killing application?
Yeah.
I think it's a really important part of what we're trying to do here is to offer a toolkit for people to innovate and to come up with ideas, rather than prescribing, this is what you must do with your SIM card. It must go into this device, or it has to go into this device, and you have to connect it like this. And look, you can build, a bus map system. Well, that's wonderful and powerful, but not as powerful as just letting the world innovate and come up with ideas and, crowdsource that innovation, if you like.
Yeah, yeah. Now, we were talking today about security within IoT. What sort of security issues are you creating, I guess, with exposing this sort of functionality, these APIs and things, or is that very secure? Or I guess, how do I put this? Are there security issues for the users, or are there security issues for the developers? What's the security sort of scope there?
We put a lot of time and thought into making sure that mokanix is secure. So, the mobile network operators themselves are very, very used to significant amounts of fraud, and they've put a lot of time and effort and investment into securing their networks and making sure that they are fully protected from the outside world. They have all kinds of, global private networks between themselves. There are some concerns around SS7 vulnerabilities. However, that doesn't affect what we're trying to do with our SIM cards. And the fact that we can integrate directly into the mobile network operator's backend, take that data, as I mentioned, over a VPN, tunnel it securely through the public internet, means that, really you've got a fully encrypted, secure data point from your device to your desk, to your cloud, to whatever you want to connect that device to. We put a lot of time and effort again into securing our APIs. So the website that we've built is highly secured. Getting access to the APIs only allow you obviously to control your own SIM cards. There's no way of controlling anybody else's SIM cards or getting their private key or anything of that nature. So we've kind of been lucky, I guess. We've been building up this product for the last 8 or 9 months. And we've watched all of these major security breaches go down the track, and we've had the advantage of building it secure from day one, rather than trying to bolt it on afterwards.
Yeah, and security from the start is always a lot easier to implement than security as an afterthought. So I think people could take solace, I guess, in the fact that it is a primary number one concern. It's a number one citizen when it's come to the factors that you're looking at with these services.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been an interesting conversation, I think, today, and quite exciting. I think for what we could be seeing. It's maybe not as pointless and useless as maybe I thought IoT would be, at least for a domestic user. But if any of the listeners out there want to learn anything more, if they want to get in touch with you, where can they go to find more information?
I mean, the obvious place is to come look at our mokanix website. We've put some use cases up there, some ideas that we've had around what could be done with our SIM cards. But there's a wealth of information there. We all of our pricing is publicly available. All of our APIs are publicly available, so anyone can see what the capabilities are and begin to start coming up with all those ideas. You can find that at mokanix.io. So that's mokanix.io. I'm sure you'll be able to push out some links as well, won't you, James? And I'm happy to talk to anyone who wants to talk about security, wants to talk about Internet of Things, or wants to talk about how that could be done over cellular networks. Yeah, sure. I will put all the links that Stuart's mentioned into the show notes, so you can go and have a click, go and have a read, maybe order some SIM cards. Let us know if you do, and tell us what you come up with, what you build. It's very interesting to find out what you guys out there are building. So, absolutely. I mean, that's the worst possible nightmare, that we send our SIM cards out into the wild and we don't know what people are using them for. We'd love to find out what people are using them for. Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll get some traction out of this, and we'll be able to maybe get some of you guys out there on the show and tell us what you built with them. I think that'd be really interesting as sort of like a round connection back to the show. That'd be fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you again for coming on, Stuart, and hopefully the world of IoT will continue to grow and continue to become more secure. And security, I guess, it's things are only as secure as they can be. No matter how smart we are and how secure we make it, there's always going to be somebody slightly smarter who comes up with a way to get around it, and you've just got to look at the issues that were raised recently with CPUs and things like that, and how you can sniff information out and stuff like that. That sort of thing just blows my mind, and that's why I'm not a security expert. And thank you for everybody out there listening today. You've been listening to The Cynical Developer. I'm James Stoddart, and you've been listening to Stuart Mitchell talking about security and IoT. If you have any questions about this or any other episode, then drop us an email, a tweet, or leave a comment on the website, where you can find all the resource links, show notes for each episode. And if you enjoy this episode, please leave a review on your favourite podcast platform, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever it is, and help The Cynical Developer to reach more developers around the globe.